While I do consider myself an Apple sheep, and I am known on the internet for defending them when they don't deserve it, I still get a comment that irks me over and over again, because I oftentimes will criticize a new product, usually it's foldables or some type of 2-in-1, and people say, well, you hate it now, but if Apple made one, if they slapped an Apple logo on it, you would instantly love it. Well, that is entirely true. It's also not entirely true, because there are also a lot of Apple products that I do not like and do not care for, and I figured compiling them into one video so that people who make that comment can watch this and realize, hey, he doesn't like everything with an Apple logo on it, will somehow justify some of my hypocrisy. At the end of the day, I get it, you're mad, you disagree with me, this isn't going to change your mind, but I just needed something official and on the record that showcases it. So without further ado, let the Apple sheep tell you all of his least favorite Apple products. Let's begin. First of all, this may not be a surprise for some of you, the Pro Display Xdr. Apple was rumored to be working on a standalone monitor for a long time. I remember reading about it back in 2017, and we didn't see it until June of last year, and man, did they go completely in the wrong direction on this one, in my opinion. Yes, I know there's a market for it. It's competing with reference monitors, and they're trying to have extreme dynamic range so that people who are really into color correction can have those accurate, vivid colors, but that's not what the standalone monitor business was for Apple. They used to be MacBook accessories or things that you could happily use alongside your iMac. And it's crazy to me that the Apple Cinema display I still use sometimes looks more futuristic than the iMac line does currently, because at least it has one size bezel all the way around. That thing was 1440p and it was 10 years ago. It was honestly pretty dang good for the time, and it was $1,000 back then. Flash forward 10 years later, did that technology get better and cheaper at the same time? Nope. Now $1,000 buys you the stand that holds the Pro Display Xdr, and I get that people try to justify it as, well, pro-end hardware is expensive, and well, you know, Red cameras in the studios that are buying these things have that kind of money, so it's okay for them to charge that much. This is a brand new category for them, and I don't like it, because this is a small, narrow niche of the market that actually cares about those types of displays, and if they're willing to spend $40,000 on reference monitors, I don't think we need Apple's talented engineers and display manufacturers working on how to save money for million-dollar industries, okay? Let the million-dollar industry enjoy their $40,000 monitors. We don't need to somehow enter that and leave all of the people with MacBooks and desktop setups that are looking for some type of decent monitor to plug into in the dust by charging $6,000 for a 32-inch 6K monitor, which, by the way, resolution, way too overkill for what most people notice, in my opinion. Essentially, they overshot it. Yes, I know, I'm not in the target demographic, but the target demographic they chose is too small, and I don't think that was a good move. Has an Apple logo on it, as small as it may be. I don't like it, and I wish they wouldn't have done it. Or if they would have done it, it would have been justifiable if they also made a cheaper entry-level standalone monitor that had thin bezels, but not the crazy XDR crap. Just take the same display panel that's in our iMacs and put it in a nice-looking screen. Not the LG ultrafine crap. That stuff looks so dated. But they didn't do that, and they've decided to just go for the rich market, and if we look at their earnings revenue after quarters, it doesn't sound like it did much for their revenue anyway. To go along with that, another Apple product I'm not a big fan of is the Mac Pro, partially because I'm not really crazy about upgradability in the first place. I get that some people are, but even if you are, that base model is insulting. The GPU in the 256 gig SSD they include in that thing is just abysmal for a $6,000 machine. More expensive than the base iMac Pro, which comes with a display, speakers, camera, 1 terabyte of internal SSD, and arguably an even better GPU. So the fact that the base model for that thing has such weak specs and still starts at $6,000, and you're probably going to have to spend thousands of dollars upgrading it later down the road, I find pretty stupid. And honestly, the Mac Pro used to max out at $6,000 back in the trash can days, and now it starts at $6,000. It's crazy to me that after all this time, they have not figured out a way to make Mac towers much cheaper or more powerful, because essentially they created a new product category. It's kind of the same issue I have with the Pro Display Xdr. Yes, there is a market. Yes, there is a demographic of people that will spend $50,000 on a computer. I know they exist, but it's just such a small and tiny demographic that why did we need Apple's talented engineers and hardworking employees redesigning a Mac Pro tower so that this small amount of people could appreciate it? I'm sure that tiny demographic is very happy, but in my opinion, Apple's been always very good at making Macs for the everyday person, and the new Mac Pro kind of disregards that. It kind of moves towards just enterprise use, just people who spend $20,000, $30,000 on machines, which is way smaller than the demographic of the trash can Mac Pro, which, albeit, yeah, wasn't designed to be very modular or upgradable, but the prices, I think, were a lot more obtainable and reasonable for the demographic it was suiting. So sure, have a Mac Enterprise if you want, but this is not, in my opinion, a true Mac Pro compared to what the Mac Pro tower used to be. The demographic it used to serve is no longer being served. Okay, so you're like, all right, Drew doesn't like the expensive Mac products, but he still defends the iPhone too much, still defends the iPad way too much. Well, not too fast, because I'm also not a fan of the Apple TV. As you can see, I'm not using it right now because it's literally unplugged and sitting under our couch. Don't judge me, I'm gonna clean up later. But this is by far my least favorite platform Apple has made. Sure, tvOS is very fluid and the App Store is nice and stuff like that, but they have gone completely overkill for what most people use a streaming device for. While the rest of the industry, like Roku and Amazon and Google, have moved on to the dongle life, where you can just plug in a little HDMI stick to the back of your TV. That way it doesn't have to take up so much room on your TV stand, and you just have a nice simple little remote that can navigate through all of the menus and streaming services you like watching. Apple is still stuck in dinosaur days with a TV box, and I know you're thinking, well, Drew, they haven't updated this in 2017. Wait for them to update it. Well, we know what the update's gonna be, and it's basically this with an A12X chip on the inside. Gee, thanks Apple, that fixes all of our problems, because the A10X chip in this thing was just not cutting it, right? Apple keeps trying to push this thing as a gaming platform, now more than ever because of Apple Arcade, even though they put Minecraft, one of the most popular games of all time, on this device, and no one played it, so Mojang stopped updating it. So if you can't even get Minecraft to be popular on your platform, I don't think you're gonna get Apple Arcade users that excited with the Apple TV. So if you want to make a more powerful, advanced Apple TV, sure, but the fact that they haven't made a streaming stick that's just focused on playing videos, yes, at 4K HDR, other TV sticks are capable of doing that for a fraction of what this costs, that just sticks into the back of the TV, which would be way more minimal, way more Apple-esque, as they love making things small and compact. This is just super dated, and it's a dead dream that Apple keeps pursuing, that, well, maybe if we put a better CPU inside, it will become a gaming platform. You tried it, okay? 3 years ago, you could have asked me, I would have said, yeah, you know, Apple has a chance at making a good console, but they tried it, the users didn't like it, they didn't respond to it, so I'm telling them now, give up, Apple, okay? This is not the right way to go. People shouldn't have to spend $150 to $200 for something that just plays Netflix and YouTube. People aren't playing tons of games on these things, okay? I know I'm not. I love using the built-in Roku in our smart TV outside. Yeah, the UI isn't quite as fluid as tvOS, but you don't use a TV's interface that much. You basically just open YouTube or open Netflix or open Hulu and watch your content. It doesn't need to be that complex, and the idea that you have to spend $150 to $200 just so you can have that fluid user interface is a dated and flawed concept in my mind. So this is neglected, dated, and needs to be changed. Also has the Apple logo. Don't like it though. Along with the Apple TV, of course, goes the Siri Remote, which I hate this thing. Has an Apple logo on it. Don't know if you noticed, but very, very thin, very, very slippery and narrow. Not great for those evenings where everything is dark and you're trying to use the TV. Because of how unintentionally symmetrical they made it, it's very easy for you to not really see what you're doing in the dark and pull it out backwards, and you realize you're not touching the right part of the trackpad, and this trackpad is so finicky. Maybe it's because third-party apps didn't optimize their apps properly for the trackpad, but while it looks great on the home screen to be able to swipe between the apps and wiggle them around a little bit, once you're actually within apps, it gets really, really confusing, to the point that people go into the options of tvOS and change it to be more like a typical TV remote with just buttons, so that the user interface can actually work more properly. So Apple tried really hard to make, you know, a trackpad on a TV remote, but I think at the end of the day, it just ends up confusing people. Whenever we have guests over and they try to use this thing, they always get real lost, and it always over-exaggerates how much they want to swipe with, and just a typical TV remote with typical buttons works fine. They over-engineered it, they overcomplicate it, and this alone is probably one of the reasons the Apple TV is so expensive. So I kind of miss the old Apple TV remote just because of how simple it was. If they just made a rechargeable version of that one, you know, it was aluminum. You could see it in the dark a lot easier than this thing, which disappears in the couch because of how dark it is, and so many people have experienced the glass on this thing shattering. Like, why did you make it out of glass? Yes, it's a remote. It's not like you're adding wireless charging to this thing. It still takes lightning. Okay, he doesn't like the Mac Pro, doesn't like the Pro Display, doesn't like the Apple TV, doesn't like the TV remote. Okay, but other than that, he loves Apple and worships Apple. Nope, still not done. These both have Apple logos, and they're incredibly dated. For my job, Magic Mouse makes the most amount of sense, so I have to keep using it, but that does not mean I have to love the fact that the charging method is incredibly stupid, and the fact that it's lightning just ticks me off even more, because lightning needs to die. We need to move away from it, and I have no clue why they are still selling this Magic Keyboard for the insane price that it is with a lightning port on it. I don't know why they can't adopt USB-C or at least Qi charging or something different that could make charging it at least somewhat more modern to the accessories we have with our Macs and not have to be like, hold on, let me go get my iPhone charger. It just feels so backwards, so dated, not happy with the Mac accessories. Last year, I also reviewed the iPod Touch, which Apple still sells. They put an underclocked A10 chip inside it, and it's stupid. iPods need to die off. If you're looking for an iOS device for your kid, just get them an older iPhone. It will be better than the iPod Touch. You don't need a cell plan if the iPhone is unlocked, so don't even try that argument. And it doesn't even have haptic feedback on the inside. The battery life is abysmal. The cameras aren't great. I don't know why it exists other than Apple just being nostalgic and not wanting to see the headline that says Apple today finally killed off the iPod. I feel like the only reason they still sell the iPod Touch is so that Apple can technically say the iPod is not dead yet, and they're scared of that headline saying iPods are dead now. But come on, Apple. We've moved into the era of services. iPhones are so common. Everybody has one, or at least some type of smartphone. It's okay to kill off old things. Selling that iPod Touch for $200 today just seems ridiculous to me. It should start at like $50 if they're gonna keep selling something that's that basic and does that little things. Still not a fan of the iPod. And a few last minute things I'm not a fan of. The iMac design is incredibly dated. I still criticize that to this day, how they haven't changed the front of the iMacs. The Mac Mini is also incredibly dated. They just added the new badge on the Apple Store page, even though all they did was add more storage upgrades to it. They didn't change anything with the CPU or GPU options. And I think I've ticked off enough Apple sheep in today's video. I'm probably gonna get a ton of dislikes for this one. That's okay. It's worth it if you guys understand. I will not defend Apple for anything. I only defend them when I think they're in the right, and that's based on my opinion, which I'm an expert on. So there you have it. Tons of Apple products with Apple logos that I'm not a fan of. This is your Apple sheep here, ironically, and I'll see you in the next one.